you get value from this, only ask I have for you is to, share it with the partner community. These were built for our partners. We created this because our partners asked, hey, we're trying to understand a little bit more about the different layers of security and how we can, get involved in helping our customers execute on those different layers. Cybersecurity is very complex. There's a lot of different aspects to it. So we created this 6-part series to kind of go through the different layers and how Quest does it, how we've been successful building our cybersecurity practice. So again, if you find value in it, please share it. If you have comments or feedback, please let us know. We love that kind of stuff. And then any kind of questions, like Paul said, type them in the chat. We can definitely have a Q&A at the end for any questions that you have. Or Paul's great at interrupting me. That is something he has down pat. So
that's true. I'm really good. Case in point. Okay, bye.
Perfect. Excellent demonstration there, Paul. So yeah, please jump in anytime for questions, and we'd love to keep this, keep the dialogue flowing here. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Today we're talking about endpoint security and threat management services. So we're going to be helping to, deliver more comprehensive solutions. So real quick, here's the agenda for what we're going to be going on today. Endpoint security and why it's critical, right? So the modern environment for our clients is evolving. We got work from home, we got BYOD, we got remote workers, we got, IT nomads, we got people all over the world accessing critical infrastructure. How are we securing those endpoints? Endpoint as a service, endpoint and device security as a service, so EDR, and then also manage detection and response strategies, right? So what does it mean to monitor, manage and respond? And also, how are we detecting things? What strategies can we as IT and cybersecurity professionals help enable with our customers? And how do we help manage that? How do we help support what they're already trying to do? And then really, we're all sales folks, right? How do we engage? What's the best way or, the most effective way to get involved in this part of their business, right? A lot of people have it figured out. A lot of people don't. So we're going to talk a little bit about strategies on how to do that. Knowledge that I hope to, share with you guys today from our experience is really the importance of, cybersecurity and the layer of endpoint security that we're going to be discussing today, and the monitoring, the detection, and the response, right? That aspect of the cybersecurity footprint, going to kind of really talk about why that's so important based on our experience. A little bit about how, EDR, MDR solutions can help from a holistic standpoint, right? Again, it's one piece of the cybersecurity strategy. Something that you hear out there, we'll get into this a little bit more, is, some people kind of think silver bullet or it's everything. It's not, but it's definitely a very, very critical component. And then also trying to, like we talked about, key points. How do we get involved? How do we help our customers? How do we get a seat at the table as a valued member of the team to talk through the different options that they can consider? So we're going to be talking techniques. We're going to be giving you guys a little bit of a high level, confidence boost in this capability and how Quest can help. And like all things in cybersecurity and like all things in IT, I know I was joking about the Google machine earlier, but you do not have to be an expert. The channel and Quest is set up so you have relationships, you have folks who need help. We have built an engine and a company that helps address complex challenges. A lot of people ask, hey, what's the silver bullet? What's the secret sauce for Quest? The secret sauce for you as a sales rep, as a technology advisor, as a consultant, as a VAR, as an MSP, you have your specialties, you know what you're good at, and you're trying to grow that knowledge. What you can do with a partner like Quest is we have an engine that comes in behind you and helps deliver that capability for you. So good knowledge, good training going on today. But again, you do not have to be the expert. You're going to learn a little bit more about how to start the conversation, and then, hopefully bring in a partner to help you, knock it out of the park and help your customer deliver that capability. So we got a couple case studies. One of the fun things about cybersecurity is kind of like war stories, in the channel. Everyone likes to hear a good war story or two, and we definitely have them, as Quest is a incident response and incident containment organization as well. That's a couple series down. Around IR and incident containment, but that's where you get the experiences when you're in the firefight, helping organizations recover from breaches. So core concepts today, again, like everything in this series, we got to understand why people are looking for help with endpoint protection and MDR, right? And so it's critical, and it's the main area of breach other than email, right? So I mentioned a minute ago, Quest is an incident response, incident containment organization. We deal with organizations that get breached. They call us for help, and we help 24/7. One of the most common areas where organizations get into trouble is an end user gets a compromised desktop, laptop, or mobile device, right? They click on a link, they get a cell phone they get a compromised text, they get something that they lose control or fidelity of that asset, right? And then that is where the malware typically gets deposited and then starts going out and detecting other vulnerabilities within the environment. So the edge is the largest attack surface area for the bad guys, right? Every organization has end users. Every end user needs to touch corporate assets and corporate applications. That is the most significant threat other than just our communication platforms around email. That's where we're seeing the most people get in trouble. So malware, ransomware, unauthorized access, password spoofing. Once they get in, they can kind of move laterally within the environment. So you gotta protect that edge. We're all hearing things around artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're going to talk a little bit about that and how it helps enable endpoint protection and MDR services, but the bad guys also have that as well. So the threats are continuing to evolve. Automation, AI, deep fakes, all sorts of things are happening to breach and secure and exploit the endpoint. So again, people are probably the weakest link in the chain when it comes to IT environments. They all have endpoints. They all have accessibility to corporate environments, and the threat actors know that, and they're continually updating their platforms, just like we're updating ours. As good guys versus bad guys, it's a constant cat and mouse game. So as trusted advisors and sales reps, and as people who are helping with your clients, as IT consultants, why does this matter? Securing the endpoint is where the danger typically happens, and it's where most of the attention of the cybersecurity folks with your clients is going to be focused. You talk to anybody about, we talked in the past around patch management, about updating or monitoring services. Everybody's kind of watching the endpoints. We all know that the endpoints are where the breaches happen. This isn't 2019 or 2020. We've all seen the bad actors, do some shady stuff and exploit the edge. So your clients are looking for, how do we do that better? How do we do that more efficiently? How do we get more visibility, right? And then, the regulators, no, sorry. Great song. But they are pushing down on the organizations, whether it's credit unions, banking institutions, manufacturing, healthcare. They are enforcing compliance for endpoint protection and managed detection and response. Kevin, great question. Yes, Kevin just shot out a question around incident retainers. We absolutely do incident retainers for incident response. So 100% a full package. We actually have a full bootcamp series on IR and incident containment and risk management coming up, Kevin. So if you want to register for that, quick plug, shameless plug for our IR session coming up. But yeah, we absolutely do that. And not to be cynical, I'm not a cynical person. Just kidding. I'm completely cynical. But a lot of incident retainers come up after a breach. There's lots of people out there who kind of think like, hey, Boy Scout model, always be prepared. Not a ton of people are doing that. It's definitely a good thing to do, and it's something that when we go through cybersecurity training and workshops and boot camps with you and your customers, we strongly, heavily advise having an IR retainer in place and having a playbook in place to do that, which EDR and MDR are a huge component of that run book. But about about 50 to 60% of clients don't really have one. So huge opportunity if you're going out there, and Kevin, you're talking to folks around IR retainers. Definitely something to be prepared for. We'll get into it a little bit. You'll get some of the same pushback you get from clients around, if it's not broke, why fix it? It's never happened to me before. I don't think we necessarily need that. In the event of an incident, we'll call our vendor. We'll get into what that actually means too. So so regulatory compliance, you're building trust, and cybersecurity incidents and breaches and malware and ransomware are one of the biggest areas of business continuity disruption and disasters in the marketplace right now. So IRs, disaster recovery, we always think like, floods or fires or, fiber cuts or, data centers or, being cut offline, or, hey, how is this DR package can actually function? Cybersecurity is one of the largest vulnerabilities in business continuity right now. It's causing about 60% of the outages for organizations declaring a DR disaster has been in the cybersecurity space. So much more than half, and we're seeing that rise as a trend. So, what is endpoint, device, endpoint security and EDR services, right? So it's basically the ability for Quest as an MSSP and a security operations center to layer in protection. So think antivirus and malware defense on all endpoints. So laptops, desktops, and often forgot, but very, very exploitable these days, mobile devices. So cell phones, tablets, point of sale systems, basically everything in your customer's environment that has an operating system on it is vulnerable. Everything in your customer's IT environment that has an operating system on it is vulnerable. I don't care if it's an Android, I don't care if it's Apple, don't care if it's a cell phone, don't care if it's a Windows environment. Everything that has an operating system on it can be exploited. There are no safe devices out there. There are no safe operating systems that cannot be hacked, breached, or manipulated in some way. So endpoint detection and response leverages 24/7 monitoring, right? And has automated controls in it. So if you think around artificial intelligence or machine learning, we've been doing this for about 8 years now. We brought on board we were early adopters into the machine learning instance. There was a certain vendor out there who had a great product. They've since been acquired a couple of times and moved around, but they were very, very early on in the machine learning aspect of next generation virus protection. And it was what's called anomaly-based detection. And why that's important is because as you go back in the legacy days of virus protection and endpoint protection, everyone was looking for signatures. And when you're looking for signatures, you're looking for threats that are known, that have been exploited before, and that can take a lot of processing power on the endpoint, right? So a lot of the CPU on your endpoints would be used to defend that little castle, right? So think a lot of the resources, if you think of your endpoint as a little castle, a lot of the resources in that castle were being used to man the battle stations and look out for signatures and known threats, coming across and attacking that endpoint. What next generation, and now this is standard table stakes for all the good endpoint technologies out there. I don't care if it's SentinelOne or CrowdStrike or Cisco or Fortinet or whatever it is. They've all kind of standardized on this anomaly-based detection, which is it's looking for basically anomalies in the processing and in the code that are not traditional, right? So rather than looking for a known threat, it takes a lot of CPU and a lot of resources. What we're seeing in the best in the next generation protection for endpoints is looking for anomalies. And an anomaly is something that typically does not happen. So it's just math, it's machine learning. It's way over my head. I think I averaged about a 2.2 in college in economics. So if you want me to have a whiteboard moment, I can I could do some great algebra. But the smart folks in the EDR space and the endpoint and anomaly-based detection are doing some really, really cool stuff, and they can detect anomalies and vulnerabilities way before using much less endpoint compute. And what that does for us is then you can enforce policies around if-then logic. So it's not making decisions like, you know, Skynet and Terminator, right? It's not making like artificial intelligence decisions, but it is using if-then logic. So if this is detected, if this is done, if this anomaly is seen, do this. So that's kind of that machine learning. And then that's constantly sending alerts back to a 24/7 provider, security operations center like Quest. We do this for thousands and thousands of endpoints all over the globe, where we see these anomalies, we see these notifications, and every single one of those threats is logged. And then you either script out what to do, or we escalate to the customer and say, hey, this is what we're detecting. You know, would you like us to respond or basically isolate that environment? Some clients, you'll be talking to your customers, they want, hey, I want the service provider to take care of it. If they see an anomaly on a desktop, I want you to shut it down. Other customers, this is where you have to have that conversation with them. And this is where we can help roles and responsibilities. So endpoint protection and device security is, again, there are great capabilities in there. Fantastic. Again, I don't really care what vendor it is. They all got great stuff. It's all great software. It's really, how do you choose to enforce the policies? And then how can you see the threats from that endpoint? So we do that 24/7. We basically see it as a layer of defense, right? So those logs and those alerts will come to our security operations. And then based on the profile that you work with your customer on how to manage that threat, some organizations want it to go to their team. Some want us to respond to it and isolate and contain that and investigate. There are a lot of false positives out there. One of the biggest opportunities for you as a trusted advisor is help organizations to cut down on the noise getting created by all these different security products, right? We've all heard the story about the boy who cried wolf. He ultimately got ignored, and it's actually a really bad story. I think the kid gets killed by the wolf, but they instantly, you know, the townspeople stopped listening to the guy who's crying wolf. Well, that's what can happen with all these security devices, right? That's what can happen with all these security services. Lots of noise, lots of chatter, lots of logs. So one thing that Quest does and that you can do as an entry point, like how do we get involved in this, is tuning. Is getting in there and tuning the alerts and helping your customers get the most out of their current endpoint protection solution, regardless of what it is. It could be CrowdStrike, it could be SentinelOne, it could be a Fortinet solution, it could be a Cisco solution, it could be a PAN solution, Palo Alto Networks. Doesn't matter, right? There's a lot of noise can be generated from that. And then after you help tune it and get them the feedback that's actually actionable, then you can talk about the policies. Like, hey, when this is a confirmed threat, do you need some help with that policy control? Now, we do that all as a service, right? We can bundle that all in as a holistic approach. We use the latest and greatest technologies out there that are available, and we can tie that in. But the opportunity for us as trusted advisors, they might not always be there ready to consume that next purchase or subscribe to that new latest and greatest licensing. They might need to get the best out of what they have. So always have that in your mind when you're thinking like, hey, how can I use Quest to help my customer here? Tuning alerts and getting that those monitoring services cleaned up and getting them actionable alerts as opposed to just noise. You know, people can get that alert fatigue, probably one of the biggest areas of opportunity to start the conversation. So now moving a little bit beyond just the endpoint, right? So we're talking now continuous, you know, threat protection and monitoring. So managed detection and response. Again, this is a 24/7 service, you know, that we provide. This is the idea of MDR is you have a security operations and a security team monitoring for threats and identifying them. And then what's really, really important as trusted advisors and as consultants out there is what is included in the response, right? When something is identified, there are hundreds of monitoring software platforms out there, SOC as a service, lots of SaaS providers, lots of subscription-based stuff. But what's critical to understand is that response. The monitor and detection, we talked about that. That's anomaly-based detection of threats, right? But what does that response entail? Does that response mean, hey, they're going to call your IT director or they're going to call your on-staff people? Or does it mean they're going to isolate that environment, they're going to quarantine that user, and they're going to automate basically further detection to see if any other users have been infected with a similar signature? Critical thing to understand. So manage detection and response, very, very important. This is a part of that can be, threat hunting, right? So actively looking for vulnerabilities, malware, those types of things. And then also what Quest does is part of ours. So we run the 24/7 monitoring, we provide proactive threat hunting, and then we also include in most all of our MDR offerings with a client. Again, it's customized to the client's requirement. We bundle into kind of Kevin's earlier question, an incident response retainer, right? So in the event that something happens, right, we have the approval and the capability from the customer to investigate and respond to that incident. Now, incident response and incident containment, it's similar to declaring a disaster. That is a legal and a insurance related declaration. So MDR, and endpoint detection and security operations, some people can kind of roll their eyes and be like, man, why are you guys being, such a pain in the ass on this stuff? Drilling into these like customer escalation points and things like that. It has to be very, very clear, because this can mean thousands and millions of dollars to your customers based on who declares the incident and who authorizes remediation. So it really, really matters. I know it's kind of like not fun. It's like a little bit bureaucratic and policy conversations, but very, very important to have that documented and have that understood. Like, when something happens, how is an incident going to be declared and how is that response going to be managed? That can be the difference between the insurance organization and the cybersecurity folks insuring and paying for that recovery or not. And those are $1 million items. It's good to bring that up when you're having that discussion. Who's responsible for declaring the incident and who's responsible for remediation? And we've been there before. And what you can do is have those conversations and then say, hey, we have organizations that have been through this fight and have been through this environment multiple times. We've helped organizations recover. We've helped organizations detect and respond and isolate. Quest was, just to put it right out there, we were heavily involved in the recovery, remediation, and restoration after the large organization, CrowdStrike had they pushed out their update and took down some organizations. We're directly involved in that. At 11 p.m. that update came out in July, and 2 a.m. that morning, our team had isolated that and kind of blocked that update from going out to a lot of folks. But then we were also right in there, recovering those assets and helping organizations restore. So we've been through it. It's not like it's not going to happen again. Those things are going to happen. People push code. People are people. But it's about kind of who's been there before, and helping to reduce the risk by continuously monitoring for threats and having that plan. So MDR is a little bit more than just endpoint. It's a little bit more than just antivirus. We're monitoring, we're detecting, and then we're responding to that, and declaring and documenting how that response happened is critical. I wanted to give you guys some feedback as far as what we're seeing out there in the market, right? From a pricing standpoint, right? So where are we seeing these things land, right? A lot of you might already know this. You've probably been through some sales iterations on this, but for the most part, For the most part, we're seeing, and this again depends on a lot of factors. So we'll send this link out to everybody after the session. But from a market standpoint, this is what the market's currently yielding around MDR services. And again, this can a lot of variability here. So typically you're going to be paying, between $8 to $12 per device from the log source standpoint, right? For MDR. So think about that for like your endpoints, your phones, your tablets, for full MDR services. And then, or if it's a per asset as opposed to a per device, it just depends how people package their licensing together. Everyone has different strategies. CrowdStrike has a different strategy than SentinelOne, has a different strategy than Cisco, than Splunk, than Arctic Wolf. They all have different strategies, right? But for the most part, and then you're going to be that $11 to $15 per asset if they're just doing an asset, if they're just doing an asset management type of a model. This is licensing. This is licensing only, right? So this variability can depend on a lot of different things, right? So organizational size, the complexity of the IT environment. Just saw a comment that these, the pricing looks relatively low. Again, a lot of features, a lot of different things can be bundled in here. This is just what we've seen, in the MDR space, and when things kind of get down to that street level competition for the actual deal. But again, mileage varies. A lot of other things can get packaged in here, not including the MDR licensing suite, like firewall management, SIM services, all sorts of other things can be packaged in here. So again, a lot of complexity can vary it, right? So different environments, different technology, legacy environments, software that's not patched, and then service level features, and things that are included, right? So incident response retainers, boots on the ground type of capabilities, senior level forensics, all that kind of stuff can be bolted in here as well. One of the things that I thought was pretty powerful, in kind of putting this together, and we just went through an example of this where an organization that we worked with had about 750 endpoints, and we put together a platform for them with the licensing and some basic monitoring and alerting services. And they were going to be spending, and they had budgeted between about $1 million to $1.5 million to staff their own security operations center. And they were evaluating. We've been working with them for about 8 years. And we put together a package which was more of a managed service offering. It ended up saving them all in about 15 times less expensive than staffing, managing, and doing this all themselves. Mileage will vary on that, but for the most part, security operations and managed detection and response from a third party is significantly more efficient for an organization. But if organizations you're working with have their own security operations center and they just need help out tasking with certain features or functions of their security platform, we do that as well, right? One of our larger projects last year was about 250 firewalls around the US. They had a well-established Fortune 100 security operations center. We provided monitoring, alerting, and detection and response at the edge, but pushed all the alerts and all the logs back to their security operations center. So they kind of had a little bit of both. So again, a couple of different areas where we can help there. Lots of factors again. I know I got another comment saying, well, that's low. Might have to update the slide. But the industry specific requirements, right? So banking and healthcare can require a couple, additional features, and regulations are always going to affect pricing. Some organizations want a handoff. We typically our services are 24/7. But some organizations do want a handoff or a shared responsibility model. That could be a little dicey, but you just got to make sure that's documented pretty well. But when you're evaluating MDR providers, when you're evaluating like organizations that can help from a security perspective, one of the biggest things people will work with us for as a provider is we touch a lot of the other aspects of the technology that are affected by security, right? So the physical infrastructure, the access control, the video surveillance, the data center operations, the network management, the monitoring, the patching, the OS support, just updating and managing the firewalls, helping organizations select the appropriate technology that they're going to eventually monitor, as a reseller and as a coordinator there. Oftentimes, we're very, very successful in that model if an organization wants an MDR provider who can help with the rest of the IT stack. We won an opportunity because there was a certain vendor that they had standardized their switch stack on, but they also had a competing vendor who was managing the edge. And those two folks weren't necessarily aligned together. So Quest came in as the managed detection endpoint protection organization that kind of acted as the glue between the competing vendors. The client liked competing vendors from a switch to an edge standpoint. That was their decision. And they had already made that investment. So we were able to come in and help operate the environment because cybersecurity touches every other aspect of the client's platforms and environment. I don't care if they're true believers in Microsoft, if they're true believers in Cisco, if they're true believers in Fortinet or Palo Alto networks. Those are all great platforms. Everything has good capabilities, but at the end of the day, when you layer in, a next generation, cybersecurity platform like a CrowdStrike or a SentinelOne or a Cisco platform or Fortinet, those are going to affect the rest of the stack. And where Quest does really well is we manage, support, resell, and deliver all those platforms as part of our building block approach. So critical to consider when you're evaluating MDR providers. Can this scale with your customer? Can it support the diverse environment? Is it a rip and replace? Do we have to standardize on just one vendor? And also, do they have the ability to respond? One of the largest areas, that Quest excels in is the incident response, right? We have a big red button on our website. We tell our customers and our partners and anybody that'll listen on every single conversation. I think we'll have an infrastructure conversation on video surveillance, and we'll bring up incident response because in the middle market and the SMB market, a lot of these clients don't know who to call when something breaks or when someone gets into trouble. So we come from that environment. We come from a VAR. We come from a professional service organization. We've helped organizations select best of breed technologies. That's part of our DNA. And then we also help manage and operate those technologies. So full stack all the way through the process, that's really our superpower when it comes to cybersecurity, is because we understand the operating system. We understand the physical environment. We understand the network core, and we understand the endpoint and the applications. So all those things have to work together in order to secure your environment. There's not one part of that layered security that you can ignore, or that layered IT environment that you can ignore when you're in an incident response, like firefight, basically recovering clients. So that's really where we kind of separate, I believe, where we separate ourselves from the competition. And you can bring, us in to kind of have that conversation, right? So where do we start, as far as a conversation with our customers? This is an urgent thing. This is something that organizations need. I hate selling on fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Everyone kind of talks about FUD and all that kind of good stuff. But this is one of those things, they need to have something in place. They have to. They have to understand that they're going to get compromised and they're going to lose their business or their operations or their data or be in violation of significant regulations if they don't have the ability to manage their environment, detect threats, and then respond, right? Now, they could build it themselves. Like I said, Quest is a VAR. We've sold millions and millions and millions of dollars of IT hardware, software, and all sorts of stuff. Not sure everyone always uses it, right? Not sure everyone always gets the most out of it. So it's tough because the software packages and capabilities are constantly evolving. And Some folks like to do it themselves, and God bless them. We're here to help them get that done and empower them with the latest and greatest stuff that they have. But if they're looking for someone who's been there before, right? If they don't want to represent themselves as their own legal attorney in a murder trial, similar concept. Like, do you want to go represent yourself again in the U.S. Court system, or do you want to hire a lawyer who's maybe been there before? Managed detection and response is something that really does, experience definitely does matter. And, the value of that is they can stand up their own security operations center for about $1 million to $1.5 million, or they can invest in someone who already has a security operations center built and has been doing it for 20 plus years and can tie into their environment and give them a little bit more bang for their buck from an operations standpoint. And then again, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, not my favorite, but any quick Google search of, the cost of a breach, significant impact to organizations as far as what it costs to secure their environment with managed detection and response versus paying for a breach. And some of these penalties and fees for losing certain types of data, which is a great question, healthcare or financial services, any of that identifiable information can be upwards of $10,000 per record lost. So significant loss there for them potentially. Yeah, Paul, what's up?
Quick question. Sorry, awkwardly interrupting here. Kevin has a great question. Can you leverage a customer's investment in Microsoft Defender? In other words, manage and monitor Defender as part of an MDR solution?
Yeah, no, great question. And absolutely. So organizations that have like E5 licenses or already have Microsoft Defender licenses or Microsoft Sentinel capabilities or anything like that, those are services that Quest can tie into our security operations and into our managed detection and response services. So if they already have the license, this is a big differentiator for Quest. And great question, Kevin. I'll send you your check later. But that capability of managing assets that are already invested, in and leveraging that as part of a MDR package, we do that all the time. And we do that because of the legacy of our company and how we've built the ability to help organizations with what they have today. So it's not a rip and replace. They don't have to get rid of the things they've already invested in. A lot of these platforms out there are available, and what Quest can do is help them get the most out of that into an MDR or an endpoint protection service. Now, those usually start with an assessment and saying like, okay, like you have 600 users and 400 of them are licensed with E5s, and you got 200 users that don't have that Defender licensing yet. So how do we want to do that, right? So those are conversations, but those are fantastic conversations because your clients are oftentimes in the market going to be seeing a rip and replace option only, right? So I think we chatted about it 1 or 2 boot camps ago. That's not a loss. When they've already purchased something, when they've already made a decision, or they've already gone down a path, the security conversation, the services conversation is not over. It's absolutely not over. Stay in touch with them. And, there's going to be a time where, they don't want to manage that. They don't want to operate that. They lost the capability to build their SOC. But yeah, that's a great question. And that is definitely something we can help organizations manage. So.
And Chris was wondering, how do you see the role of MDM, UEM, as in like Intune, JAMF, AirWatch, etc., in endpoint protection?
Yeah, no, great question. So like mobile device management and helping with that as far as patching, updating, and visibility, there are some tools that consolidate that into a security package with a mobile device management, or there's also like Quest, we run, patch management as a service and endpoint management and monitoring for performance. And sometimes that's different than just performance and security. But the patching is one of the biggest vulnerabilities out there. So mobile device management, Jamf, managing the Apple environments and Intune and all those different platforms out there. Very, very critical piece of it as well. But that's more on the maintenance and operation side of the house, which is just as important. Shoring up the defenses of your walled environment there, just as important as detecting the vulnerabilities. Some organizations will kind of bundle that together, like a let's see, there's like Tanium out there is a good example. They're a Ferrari of enterprise type of deployments. They'll bundle those SKUs together. I think like Ninja and a couple others will do that too, where they bundle the asset management concept of like patching the endpoint and monitoring the performance of the endpoint with the security, right? So it really just depends on how folks want to see that. But those are great opportunities to have that conversation with your client, because patch management and asset management and endpoint for performance monitoring is not the same thing as MDR. It's not, those are not the same conversation, but clients have to figure out, how am I going to keep my systems patched, updated, and monitored so I can remotely access them and support my end users, which can open up its own set of vulnerabilities. While at the same time, how do I secure that endpoint, right? And we talk about this, Paul, you and I talk about this on the podcast all the time. Every time you push forward with a little bit more convenience, you might be opening up your left and right flank from a vulnerability standpoint. So it's a balance, and those are great conversations to have with your customer.
And are you, we have one more question. Are you good to answer that?
Yeah, sure.
Great. The question is, does Quest have an SLA for containment?
An SLA for containment.
Kevin, yeah, if you have more information, Kevin, let me know. That's what Kevin, yeah, great.
Yeah, no, I think I understand. So,
Okay.
So we provide managed services around different security providers, right? So we'll use a Microsoft Defender, or we'll use a CrowdStrike, or we'll use a SentinelOne. But as a containment organization, we'll put SLAs around the idea of notification, and when discovered, like, here are the steps we're going to take, and here's the escalation path. We don't have like a 100% guarantee type of an offering that something bad won't happen or malware won't get onto an endpoint, but we do have SLAs around our response time for isolating that environment, and getting approvals from clients to remediate. So high sense of urgency, rapid response, notifications, things like that, as far as like how we're going to deal with it. But yeah, there's no malware guarantee kind of concept out there. It's a little bit of the Wild West with all the operating systems and patching and vulnerabilities out there. So that's where we're at on that one. So
Great, thanks.
yeah, good questions. Cool. Yeah, so we're coming up on the last about 10 minutes. Some of the common objections that we have out there is like, we have antivirus software in place. Why do we need more? This is endpoint detection and response is proactive. It's, again, anomaly based, so it's not looking for signatures. A lot of the legacy antivirus out there has known exploits, right? There are known exploits on a lot of those base packages out there that can be taken advantage of. And the bad actors they're not targeting organizations based on intentional, like, breach simulations and going after, hey, I want to go take out that mom and pop. They're scanning IPs, and they're scanning anything that's touching the public internet for potential vulnerabilities. and for, potential legacy systems. And once they understand what you have, and if you have a signature out there that's showing, what you have on your platform, it could be game over, right? And so you have to be looking for anomalies, and you have to be doing it 24/7. And where we typically say is that's kind of table stakes these days. If you have traditional AV on your environment, God bless you, good luck. It's a matter of time before something goes a little sideways for them. So stay in contact with those folks. Make sure they have your number for incident response assistance, and make sure that they have really good backups. Would be also a response there. The too expensive concept is, we've kind of gone down that path a few ways. They can build their own cybersecurity practice. They can leverage an MDR option, but financial ramifications, reputational ramifications. Some middle market organizations that we've seen, in SMBs, that they can just go away if they lose their backups, if they lose the ability to restore. They're not coming back. And if they don't have their appropriate insurance, which, by the way, insurance providers are getting tighter and tighter on payouts. Check with your customers on if there's a ransomware or a malware rider that's required on insurance. I think we have an insurance and risk management bootcamp coming up, where we're going to have some folks come in and talk specifically around that. But things like insurance riders are now getting added to their cybersecurity insurance packages, specifically around malware and ransomware, right? So that's fun. You get cybersecurity insurance, and if you don't have a specific ransomware rider as part of your contract that you pay for specifically, you're not covered. So the expensive thought, these are table stakes for operating an IT environment. And then hey, it hasn't happened so far. Things are constantly evolving. If they want to, if an organization would like to talk to, one of your clients would like to talk to, anyone on our team around what we're seeing out there, or do a simple workshop, or talk through some examples of vulnerabilities. One of the things that's a great way to get involved in MDR or endpoint protection is hey, I understand you think it's expensive. I understand you don't think you're a target, and you haven't had any security issues so far. Would you like to see how the bad guys are looking at you? Would you like to see a snapshot of what you're presenting to the internet? So that session takes about a week. We load their domain and their external environment into a platform that we run and manage from a reputational standpoint. And we can show them very quickly what they look like to the outside world. So if they're open to doing that, it's a very, very eye-opening experience, as far as, like, a lot of people are kind of lucky they haven't been hit yet, when we show them their current external posture to the web. So those are great ways to do it. If they want to hear about it, that's great. If they don't, and they're fine, and they want to keep rolling down the path, again, keep in touch with them from an IR perspective, and in the event they need an incident happens, we can certainly help. So yeah, so going through, we got a couple minutes left here for any questions that you might have. But endpoint security, from a next generation standpoint, anomaly-based detection, machine learning, it's the initial gate, right? It's just as important as every other layer of security. It helps organizations understand their policies. It helps them understand their permissions. It needs to be on every operating system they have, right? Every operating system is a gateway, to their environment. If it has a network connection to them, critical component. The proactive nature of MDR services and 24/7 monitoring, alerting, critical for you guys as you're starting this dialogue with your customers or continuing it. Really, really harp on that response. The managing detection, the alerting, and getting that tuned is a great opportunity. We'd love to help you and your customers with that tuning, and with that, that detection and getting them accurate data and through the noise, but really dig into what does it mean to respond if they're under a current contract or under a current SLA. What does that response actually mean? What's included in the contract? What's not? And what are the capabilities of the firm that they're working with, or their internal capabilities, that when something goes wrong, do they have the ability to pull on 24/7 a system administrator, a senior level network person, a cybersecurity forensics person, and a physical asset, got to go out and rehang APs or re-image desktops. Because that's what really happens when a disaster strikes. You need every layer of the IT stack in order to recover. And that, if they don't feel confident in that, they might want to bring in someone like Quest that can help with every layer of IT in order to recover and respond to an incident. Very critical. Really focus on that response when you're talking to your customers around if and when something happens. And then we're here to help you as a trusted advisor. We're here to help you as a consultant or as an MSP in whatever capacity you would like to leverage our skill sets and our background. So we take the building block approach. We know we're not all things to all people, and we know we're not all things to all partners, but we want to help augment what you are doing, and help you execute for your clients, as best we can. So just closing out here. Well, again, if you found this beneficial at all, or you'd like to have a deeper dive discussion, please like it, please share it. It'll be on the resources tab in our partner portal. And so just jump in the partner portal, go to resources. If you want to share this with anyone on your sales team or in your kind of trusted network of advisors out there, we really appreciate you sharing this out with the community. And thank you very much for your time today. So Paul, I don't know if we have any more questions, or if we want to kind of jump to the award.
Yeah. Okay. So we got 2 very quick questions. And if you have any other questions, leave them in the chat. We can answer them after the call as well. Really quick, Adam, please talk about how your customers vary their endpoint security for contingent labor versus employees.
No, great question. So contingent labor, most of that endpoint protection is going to be policy driven. So multi-factor authentication is going to we like to enforce policies based on contingent labor and what they have, because a lot of those guys will bring in their own desktops. So in order for them to gain access, we help clients put in place policies that validate that endpoint is secured. If it's not, then we need to send that contingent labor force, that consultant or that contractor, get them to a compliant endpoint, whether that's pushing out endpoint protection or some type of antivirus. That needs to be validated by their multi-factor authentication. So those are great questions. That's a policy conversation that we can help enforce, and that's usually really a big part of the regulatory requirements that'll get checked off.
I know we're coming up on the hour, so I want to welcome Darcy here to draw our winner for today, the $200 gift card. So Darcy, thank you for joining us.
Hey, I just did it, and today's winner is Summer Kelly. So we have your information, and our team will reach out with an email after the webinar. So, and thank you everyone for joining us today too. It's always nice to have you.
Yeah, Adam, this has been fantastic. Do you have time for one quick question, Adam?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, congratulations, Summer.
Can you assist a customer in answering a DDQ, a due diligence questionnaire? Just from Kevin, he was wondering about that.
Yeah, so we have a due diligence department. A lot of folks going through mergers, acquisitions, or their own customer validations doing due diligence. We have a service called Virtual Cybersecurity Teams, and part of that is our compliance folks who can help with risk management and just help an organization. Hey, this is what you have in place, and going through a due diligence questionnaire. So yeah, that's definitely something we help out with from a professional services standpoint. So great question. And, thank you.
Yeah. And finally, just want to mention our next bootcamp series will be December 4th. So that'll be navigating network security and access control solutions. You can register. We'll provide the link. Thank you so much for joining. Adam, thanks for all the insight and great questions. We really appreciate it. And also, if you're like, hey, I want to hang out with Adam and Paul more, we have a podcast called the Incident Report that you can check out. We release episodes probably every other week is our realistic goal. Yeah, that's our goal. So yeah, Adam, any final thoughts?
No, again, thank you everyone for joining. And if you have any questions, please check us out on our partner page. And yeah, reach out to your channel account manager or the partners at questus.com. And we'd love to talk to you about what you're working on.